Live from New York, it's Top Level Podcast.
What up? I'm sitting here next to Michael J., which is sort of a dangerous recipe. Now he's going to have to look me in the eye when he suggests Nia decks. But
there are Nia decks that have performed this very weekend, Patrick Chapin.
Yes. So, Michael J. Flores, thank you for hosting me here in New York. We are also very thankful to Jeff King for helping bring this episode to everybody.
Shout out to Jeff King, one of our patrons. So this episode is brought to you by all of our lovely patrons, and Jeff in particular this week. If you want to help support Top Level Podcast even more than you already do by downloading and listening every week. Sharing.
Which is caring.
Check out patreon.com/toplevelpodcast, or there's links in the show notes. However, in addition, this week, and we're going to ask your favor to do this a little bit, there's a survey in the show notes this week. If you guys could take the 30 seconds to fill out the survey, it's in the show notes. We would love it. Love you forever. We already do. But that's enough business. Let's talk about Magic the Gathering.
Yes, this weekend, Grand Prix Dallas-Fort Worth.
It's still going on right this second.
Yes.
While we are sitting here podcasting.
Yes, but if we stall for enough, eventually, perhaps there will be a trophy in the hands of I don't know, a Grixis deck, or perhaps Chandra, Torch of Defiance.
All right, so you guys, by the time this goes up, you will have already learned the outcome of this Grand Prix, which we don't know yet, right? Yes. It's happening right now. What Patrick is referring to is the 1-8 matchup between Grixis Aficionado. I believe 4 Cryptic Commands in his deck.
Of course. Corey Burkhart is the premier Grixis player these days. He's just doing it. He's perpetually locked in on Grixis and Modern and always tuning it, always doing the work, and always comes up with good lists.
So Corey is up against my good friend, Phil Napoli. I believe this is Phil's second Grand Prix top 8 with Infect.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Phil definitely, he's been on a tear, and that's great to see. But traditionally, I mean, it's not just, don't get me wrong, Phil's my boy. I love Phil. Corey Burkhart, not only is he from RIW, awesome dude, good friend of mine, he's also got Grixis and a good matchup.
So you think that, just heads up, personality's not part of it. Somebody's love, just kind of inhuman, ridiculous, slavish love for Grixis aside, you think kind of the point removal control deck, awesome against the Infect deck, just actually?
Well, so traditionally, Grixis has been pretty substantially advantaged against, not substantially, but has been generally advantaged because of the, being so mana efficient, the combination of things like Spell Snare, Lightning Bolt, the very, very cheap forms of interaction, as well as some things like Snapcaster Mage, which are true 2-for-1s. Not only do you get the selection, you can potentially block with Snapcaster Mage.
Oh,
but this
Snapcaster Mage rumbles real good with a 1/1 creature.
Of course. And Grixis just has lots and lots of ways to really punish small creatures. I mean, things like Electrolyze are quite good against the Infect creatures. The thing is, Corey's playing a teched-out Grixis deck for this new metagame, this Dredge metagame, and he's going a little bit different of a direction than some of the past Grixis decks that have been so good. I think he's still got a lot of great weapons, but for instance, he's only playing 2 Spell Snares and no Mana Leaks and no Remans. He's using Counter Squall instead.
I love Phil, and I want to cheer for Phil, but Corey's got the 1, right? Which means play in the entire top 8.
Yeah, he crushed it. He was just dominating the whole weekend.
How can I not cheer for someone with 2 main deck Counter Squalls?
Dude,
that was my thing.
You invented that. You were the first one telling people that you should just play Counter Squall instead of Negate, and they're like, we don't care about the damage. You're like, you will sometime. Maybe you do. You don't care about the it's just so easy to.
It's a time walk. Just look at you have all these base 3 damage sources, right? It's you push them over, and they didn't see it coming.
And in a way, you had a big impact on Corey's Counter Squalls. Him and I playing together. He fell in love with the Counter Squall.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Like years ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. He's been at the forefront of Counter Squalls. It's just not always right to main deck him in Modern, but he'll play him in sideboard. But this time he did.
But if you look at also Kolaghan's Command, that card is brutal. In particular, against Infect. Infect's got only like 12 offensive creatures, more or less, right? 4 of them are artifacts. You can split this thing, and then it messes up things like Spellskite. Like, that's a brutal card against Infect.
But where I was going at with a little bit of Corey's version is, even though he's got some pretty decent weapons, all Grixis decks do for an Infect matchup. Some of the challenges, though, his deck has 4 main deck Cryptic Commands, which are decent but slow. He's got 4 Ancestral Visions, which are quite slow. He's got 3 Tassiger the Golden Fangs, which are actually surprisingly not as good against Infect as they are in most matchups, because they don't block very well. And
they block the elf, but not the flyer and not the unblockable guy.
A lot of the pump spells do +4/+4.
Oh, so
yes, yeah. Plus, even a Become Immense on your Tassiger can remove your investment and set you way behind. But then also, Tassiger is just not a fast clock.
You do like 5 turns, right? At least. Oh, no, you got like some lightning bolt counter squall here and there.
You're hoping.
It's got creeping tar pit.
And then
the last attack might get you good with creeping tar pit.
And then Corey's deck has has some tap lands, some cantrips. When you're spending your mana doing things like Serum Visions and Thought Scour, sometimes you end up just getting tempoed out because of the sheer volume of 1 mana and 0 mana plays the Infect deck can make. Additionally, the Infect deck has gained a powerful new weapon because of Blossoming Defenses. It now has effectively 8 1 mana counter spells.
That card is so good.
So good. And
should I play this deck? I think I own every single one of these cards.
Yeah, I mean, this is lots of good cards. We got a new card in here, Spire Bluff Canal. Love to see that.
I own that card.
Yes.
I think the one I might not own is Creeping Tar Pit.
And as a note, it's important. Corey's got an Engineered Explosives main deck, which is something we don't see all that often anymore in some of the Grixis decks. But it's kind of an interesting nod to the Bridge from Below tokens of a Dredge deck, while at the same time giving him some play, some options against things like a Boggle or a Blood Moon or
Lantern,
which made definitely a big uptick of Lantern this past weekend.
Engineered Explosive is an interesting card. Like, nobody gets destroyed by it, really. Like, even in the cases where
Lantern does. They have Pithing Needle. They have Pithing Needle. They do have Pithing Needle.
I mean, even if you look at a situation where you're getting, in theory, a huge amount of material for your Engineered Explosives. Like, let's say they have 176 2/2 zombie tokens, right? Even in this case, they have some ability to reload in all likelihood. So, it was a dramatic thing for a second, but they're not annihilated by it, right? That's the thing. Like, nobody's annihilated by it.
The person who has Phyrexian Unlife in play.
Oh, well, that guy's dead. Just dies on the spot, right?
But most people, you're right. It's actually it's highly variable. It's like Wrath of God, right? Like, sometimes Wrath of God is game winning, but they do have more chances to play. They have more interaction, more ways to try to rebuild.
If you Wrath of God like Tom Ross, I think he just kills you half the time the next turn. I think that Engineered Explosives, the reason that I think that it's so good is that, especially in a game 1 situation, Corey's got 1 in his main deck. People just don't think about it as part of their calculus as they put their, maybe 3rd and 4th turns together. And so, even though nobody's really ruined by it in terms of their deck strategy, individual humans can be ruined by it, right? Because let's say they just lay out a whole bunch of creatures that all cost the same amount of mana. And they're like, all right, I'm going to get him with this big swing. Like, what can he really have? Like, they're thinking, all right, he's got Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster, Lightning Bolt. In order to defeat that, I actually need to put a bunch of stuff out. That's the only way I can push through Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster, Lightning Bolt, right?
Yeah, exactly. The last thing you want to do is slow play your 1-drops against Lightning Bolt, Terminate, Snapcaster, the Lightning Bolt.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, God.
That's atrocious, right?
Terrible.
So lay them all out, and they're like, main deck Engineered Explosives, get there. And then you're like, oh, well, I guess I could rebuild 2 turns from now. But 2 turns against a deck with Ancestral Vision and potential card drawing from
Tassiger,
Tassiger. Yeah.
2 turns, that could be an Ancestral Recall worth of extra
That
cards.
might just be it. You know?
It might be 2 land drops too, because 2 extra land drops sometimes get you up enough where you're snapcastering your Cryptic Command and then just going off, where you're just locking them out, soft locking, you know?
This is just ridiculous. You can't really beat that with a regular deck. I think nobody's optimized to beat Snapcaster Cryptic Command because it's so outlandish that someone might try to do this. That's way, way more powerful, but it also requires a ton of mana.
One of the things I love about this sort of approach, which we haven't seen
Any
this style of Grixis deck in a little while. One of the things I love about it right now is how much it preys on decks that are like some of these other combo decks. When people are like trying to interact with this dredge format by playing a bunch of combo decks, one of the things that happens is that the aggro decks are all getting pushed out. Traditionally, Burn has been a challenging matchup for Grixis. You know, stuff like your beloved Naya Burn deck. It's been a challenging matchup for Grixis, but Burn has no chance against Gnaw to the Bone Dredge. It's just terror. It's a bloodbath. Not only is Gnaw to the Bone a 1-card win the game, they don't even have to draw it. they just
do their thing, right? Waiting for them.
Right. They by turn 3 are going to see a third of their deck. If they can find one of their 3 Gnaw to the Bones, they win the game, regardless of if they drew it or not. That's so big, and that's not even counting the other 57 cards in their deck. And so Corey, actually, there's a couple things, and I know there's a lot of modern decks to talk about, but Corey's deck is a master class on tuning for Grixis decks. In particular, I think you're going to love some of the things he did in the sideboard, where there's some valuable lessons that cross over to even non-Grixis decks by far. I mean, like the use of 2 Anger of the Gods, 1 Damnation, a 2nd Engineered Explosives, and an Is It Staticaster. What are your thoughts on that distribution of sweepers, token defense, ways to combat swarms?
So when you see like 1 Damnation and 2 Anger of the Gods, I'll start there, right?
Yep.
Anger of the Gods, all other things held equal, has got to be first consideration. First of all, it costs 3 instead of 4, and that's like a mile. Maybe that might be 100 miles in modern distance, right? So think about how many decks can Goldfish you before you would even play the 4th land. Especially this deck only has 22 lands, so even though it's got like 8 cantrips in the main deck, you're committing mana to just getting land drops sometimes. To me, this says, I'm not even that scared of Dredge, because Anger of the Gods is the card that's optimized against Prize Amalgam, and, you know, Damnation, it's fine, it's a good sweeper, etc. But what this is actually a nod to is the potential necessity of having to defeat larger creatures, right? Or multiple larger creatures. But maybe not too much, right? So I think that my guess would be that his calculus is, I'm going to have to do this more often. I'm not that scared. This is a supplemental thing. But I want to be in a situation where if somebody has, I'm just going to say 3 Titans in play, right? I'll be able to put myself in a situation where I can respond. Is It Staticaster, on the other hand? This is a card I almost feel like I would love to see more of. Like, it comes down with surprise, and in certain matchups, if it's in play, they almost can't win, right? Like, if you got Is It Staticaster sitting, it's not even there yet, right? Your opponent passes a turn, you get your Is It Staticaster. What's Inspect supposed to do, right? Well, you start tax them at the end of their turn, right? Like, who's going to start the initiative? Because their best case scenario is that they have to blow at least 1 pump spell when you're setting up the stack, and it can block, right? There are a lot of things that are going on with this card. So, I almost feel like I'd love to see more of that card. I think it's really good, and there's outlier decks in modern, or at least commonly played cards that this card can really prey on. Most important being Lingering Souls, right? But there's black-white tokens decks, Lingering Souls and Abzan decks, Lingering Souls and Restore Balance decks. And that card is so much better than Anger of the Gods or Damnation against those kind of decks.
So, Is It Staticaster definitely one of the just best cards against Infect? You know, like, outside of a Spellskite or a Wild Defiance, which has really fallen out of favor, it starts abyssing them. Plus, you can just, like, of cards, like, it takes a card out of their hand each turn, almost like a disrupting scepter, but often they won't even try to do it. The best thing that they'll often get into a spot of just having an Inkamoth Nexus, try to build up enough land so they can have a really big turn. But I think that the reason that Corey's only playing one has to do with just how incredible every single card in the sideboard is. I mean, Grixis is one of the decks that just gains so much from its sideboard is so good. Its sideboard slots are so valuable, and I think part of the theory here is that you get diminishing returns from some of these sweepers that he has because there is the potential to play around them. When sometimes there's some formats where you'd love to just stack Izzet Staticasters because the second one locks out so much more stuff.
Yeah.
But I think Modern is not really that format, and it would be very difficult to find very many slots, so it's not like you're going to reliably get two in play at the same time. But the Izzet Staticaster existing in your deck at all, somebody can play around it a little bit by, for instance, instead of playing the second Lingering Souls and flashing it back, they instead play a 3/4 Tarmogoyf or something. Whereas if they start playing around Izzet Staticaster, they might slow their kill down by a turn. And
Do people still summon Siege Rhinos? Not really, right?
No, most of the Obzon decks don't even necessarily play 4. It's fine to have as a couple options, but there's just better. There's other things you can do.
People are just Grimflame.
Grimflare is just too much better.
Yeah, same size offensively for half the mana.
And Burn has been pushed out in many ways, which has really diminished Siege Rhino's incidental value.
Yeah, Siege Rhino is awesome against Burn, not just because of the life gain, but because it costs 4.
Race.
Well, it costs 4, so it doesn't trigger Eidolon. It's actually a huge deal.
So Izzet Staticaster, though, also is, while it is probably the sweeper, so to speak, on here that he has that is the most game-winning, the most devastating, it is also among the most narrow. Because there are a lot of places where you can't use Izzet Staticaster that these other sweepers are incredible.
Well, yeah, it's bad against 2/2 tokens, right? It's great against 1/1 tokens, but even the 1/1 token decks often have cards that, I don't know, buff tokens, some kind of a Crusade effect, commonly played, or, Bridge from the Below decks actually just start with 2/2 tokens.
And then a final component of Izzet Staticaster has to do with the 3-cost glut that naturally occurs in Grixis decks. So Kolaghan's Command is a 3-cost card, but Engineered Explosives is often a 3-cost card because you want to play it and then activate it. Snapcaster Mage, Flashback, most of the ones, also a 3-cost card. And then in the sideboard, the fact that you already are competing with Engineered Explosives, Anger the Gods, Fulminator Mage, and a lot of these things, like when you're bringing in Izzet Staticaster, there's a decent chance that you're also bringing in Anger the Gods. The one other factor that I like about Izzet Staticaster, though, that I think is easy to miss is how much it being an instant matters. The other sweepers don't surprise people. And when Izzet Staticaster is part of your range, like for instance against an affinity deck, it makes it harder for them to play around some of your cards. And that's actually where a lot of the value from these kinds of control decks come from, is the opponent not knowing what you have, not knowing what all to play around against. But some of the other numbers that he's chosen are not just to have a more diverse mix of interaction, because like the diverse mix gives him options. Like when you have a Damnation and an Anger of the Gods in your hand, you have more options than when you just have 2 Angers of the God in general. And obviously cantrips and stuff that like Serum Visions gives you more looks at that kind of stuff. But one of the other things that's important is just making sure you have the right numbers of cards to go in and out.
Oh, that's a great point.
Damnation is a card that goes in against Tarmogoyf decks with Grim Flare. You don't bring Izzet Staticaster or Anger of the Gods in against those people. But when you have 1 Damnation, it just so happens that Corey has tuned his deck into a spot where he has 1 extra spot there that he needs a card to come in. And Damnation coming in against these Jund decks, these Obzon decks, and there's a number of other types of decks. The Knight of the Reliquary Bant decks, Anger of the Gods would still come in. However, the fact that you have a Damnation is particularly valuable to mix things up for when you're milling yourself with Thought Scour, when you're looking through a lot of cards. The fact that you have one more look to try to find an answer to Knight of the Reliquary makes a big difference.
What do you think about Sun Droplet? That always is just a head scratcher to me. Like, it's so low impact when you're playing it. Like, it needs so much time to build up, and I feel like I've played some Grixis in Modern. I always felt like Batterskull was my best card against Burn consistently.
Oh,
Like,
I wouldn't even board it in.
really?
Oh,
You just love Sun Droplet so much more?
No. So
I mean, Dispel actually, I think, is the best one.
agree.
Yeah,
I agree with you there.
And especially from the Nyaburn side, I kind of don't care. If they have a Sun Droplet, they probably took 2 to cast it. You just hit them with your creatures or something. But Dispel is the one like, oh, I'm gonna flurry you out. Like they're like, especially if they formatted like Dispel, Snapcaster Dispel or something. It's so horrible.
So I didn't like Batterskull against Burn because whenever I would tap out to cast Batterskull, then I would die.
They just kill you, yeah.
Right, and I think that you can do Batterskull if your deck is loaded with stuff like Inquisition and Kozilek's.
Yeah.
It doesn't work as well if your deck is full of cryptic commands. And no, you just there's a fundamental difference. Like if the more discard you have, like if your deck has Inquisitions and you board in Duress, then you can attack a burn deck from a very different angle because you can also not only make them discard some number of their burn spells, you can force them to play into you instead of them getting to store up all their burn spells.
Yep.
So then you can make your spell snares and your counter squalls more live. But Corey's deck, he doesn't have access to any discard. And the second part of the equation, the reason I didn't play Sun Droplet as much before, I played it long ago, and it was actually quite good, but I stopped playing it eventually because every single burn player would just board in their
Smash to
Smithereens, right? Or Destructive Revelry. Now that they're with the Naya, the number of Grixis decks playing Sun Droplet though is very low lately because everybody knows that everybody has Smash to Smithereens, and so Corey took advantage of the fact that at this point it's been so long since anybody showed up with a true control Grixis deck with Sun Droplet that if you played Sun Droplet in small numbers, small enough that they still can't really exploit him, because if they board him for Smash to Smithereens and he just has 2 Sun Droplets, what are they even doing?
I don't know. I don't like that argumentation. So, like, let's just, all other things held equal, Burn deck's probably going to win game 1, right? I mean, obviously Corey could win, but I think my money's probably on the Burn deck sight unseen. Then Corey beats them because he drew Sun Droplet in game 2. I mean, the jig is up. I think that the Burn deck's happy to have the...
No, I think it's close. I think that game 1 is pretty reasonably close. Like Corey's deck is actually slightly better set up against Burn game 1 than a lot because he's got all these counter spells, like 2 counter squalls, 4 cryptic commands, 2 spell snares, and then also the fact that he can use Colligan's command as a discard spell and rebuying Snapcaster Mage. All this stuff matters. And the printing of Spire Bluff Canal is a small gain, but it's a helpful one. It's better than Sulfur Falls in this.
That's an awesome card, I think, in the Burn match.
I also Burn is one of the matchups where I actually really like Ancestral Visions, which it sounds somewhat non-intuitive, but when you put Ancestral Visions down, it is a powerful way to force the Burn player to play into you, despite you not having discard spells, because they can't just sit around and store up, or you're going to draw so many cards that you can actually just overpower them. But the other thing about Sun Droplet that I think is worth noting here is that it is a Grand Prix where he is aware that on day 1 the percentage of burn is much higher than it is on deep into day 2. Sun Droplet is the type of card that tries to win the match by itself. Like it tries to win the game by itself. It aspires to anyway. And I don't know. It might be that Sun Droplet is isn't the right way. If Corey did it though, I think it is. He's definitely the authority on Grixis I trust the most at the moment. And I think though that I would love to at least ask him about Kalidas, Trader of Get.
Yeah.
Because I think Kalidas is a better.
A better Sun Droplet?
No, I think it's a better Batterskull. It's much worse than Sun Droplet at being a Sun Droplet. However, Dredge is a real thing.
Well, I mean, there's no question in my mind that Kalidas is... I mean, look at Kalidas in Standard. There are decks that I've advocated for in previous weeks that just stone lose the game if Kalidas is in play and unchallenged, right? Like, I don't think that changes really in Modern, except insofar that the Modern decks will have a harder time removing a 3/4. Like, how are they going to kill a 3/4? Like, in Standard, things like Lightning Axes and Unlicensed Disintegration are so much more commonly played. And the
In Dredge in Modern, they're playing Collective Brutality.
Yeah, that's
Flaggery. Yeah, that's a tough way to kill a
I
card.
mean, like, this doesn't seem like a real thing to me. Well, especially in a blue deck, right? Or like, how many resources are you going to throw at this? And then you're like, it's kind of squall.
Now, what do you think about the use of both Anger of the Gods and Damnation in a deck with 14 black and 14 red?
I think that I would be leaning heavily on those,
Leaning heavily on...
on those cantrips to fix your mana. Obviously, there's a great opportunity to fix your draw in this deck much more than in almost any other deck in Modern. Right? He has tons of dedicated sources to make decisions, right? And also, how many fetch lands does he have? Like, there's opportunities to get exactly the mana you want. You can use cards like Serum Visions. I mean, and Ancestral Vision is actually another good example of this, right? Where, especially, let's say you open up on Aspire Bluff Canal, you can just draw your way into the colors you need. I think you just choose to get which color you want early, then live long enough to get the other colors, right? Isn't that kind of what's supposed to happen here?
Yeah, and the fact that things like Serum Visions give you selection towards some of the colors, that does matter a little, but this deck actually has deceptively more ways to look than even just that, because, like, for instance, you might not normally Snapcaster your Thought Scour in a particular spot, but you really want to get a 4th land for Cryptic Command, so you do. Like, you can turn some of these cards into mana in unusual ways.
I have to say, I played a little Grixis last year in Modern, and I was actually really surprised at how I ended up playing my own Thought Scours depending on the matchups. Like, sometimes you look, am I really Thought Scour here? Like, you're counting, like, what are the chances that I mill the actual land, the specific land I use? Because you don't need to necessarily get any land to complete your puzzle, right? You're like, hey, if I flip this, then I need to have this particular, like, I either need to get, like, a particular type of fetch land and then fetch for a basic in order to maintain my life total. And I would end up doing things like Thought Scour the opponent, even though it was kind of off-brand, because the danger of milling myself in certain situations was high.
So I think it comes down to how your deck is constructed. There are some number of Grixis decks where that might be the case. I definitely think Corey's deck is much more resilient to that. Partly because he has redundancy with both Watery Graves and Steam Vents, which are those are the important ones.
Yeah, but they come into play tapped. That's the thing.
Some of the time, right?
Defending your life total.
So the much bigger part of the puzzle, though, I think, is that Corey's deck has more land than a lot of these, like, Delver, Aggro Grixis decks, which I would guess are more likely some of the ones you're describing. And more importantly, he's playing 3 Tassigers in addition to 4 Snapcasters and 3 Culligan's commands. The amount of graveyard synergies and interactions he has is so high that you got to Thought Scour yourself almost all of the time, unless your opponent sets up the top of their deck in some meaningful way, or there's like a Rest in Peace or something.
I was playing Grixis Delver, but
exactly.
not Delver of Secrets. I had like 4 Gurmag Anglers and 3. That kind of thing.
Yeah, and I've made that play too with the Delver decks. It's much more likely. First of all, your mana base is so tightly, there have been times where I played Blue-Red Delver a little while back, and it sounds silly, but I Thought Scour my opponent in one spot because I really could not afford to mill my 1 mountain. I only had 1 mountain in my deck. I needed to be untapped. I've got the fetch land to go get it, but I can't afford to mill it. And I don't need the cards at this point. I've got like 30-something cards in my 20-something cards in my graveyard.
You ever Thought Scour someone when they had a bonfire on top of their deck? I've done that like 3 times. That's the greatest feeling, right?
I've Thought Scoured when I had a bonfire on top of my deck. Like, I played bonfire in that deck.
I have also bonfire, but I'm telling you, I think they had bonfire.
I know. It's got to be satisfactory. Very satisfying, anyway. But, so actually, it looks like we have an update, and Corey defeated good man Phil Napoli with Grixis, but there's actually another matchup in this.
I can't imagine Phil's unhappy with the results of being back on the Pro Tour.
And it's great to see him back in the Pro Tour, for sure. So, I know you're going to love this one. Kevin Mackey with Skred Red has won his first round. Dude, I'm gonna let you take it away on this
Okay.
one. Because I know you have loved this deck more than anybody. Like among bad decks, I don't know that there's anybody on the show who loves it as much as you do. Like,
I will say my piece on this deck. I will just put the deck back up so I can look at it. All right. So I just want everyone to know I was sitting on the other side of the table when Patrick saw this deck, and I hadn't seen it yet. Right.
Right.
And he said something along the lines of, "My God, is this deck bad? You'll love it." Right? So I was stealing myself, and I'm looking at this, and I have to echo his his position to some degree, but I don't know if I can get behind this. So this deck's got 4 Coth of the Hammer, 1 Chandra Torch of Defiance. One of the things we were talking about a few months ago when Chandra was first spoiled was, would Chandra displace Coth of the Hammer in Skred Red decks? And you're like, no one will play Skred Red. This isn't even a real question. Apparently the answer is no. Apparently maybe it's 5th Koth, but not 1st Koth. But this creature selection is crazy to me. 3 Pia and Kieran Nolar, 3 Stormbreath Dragon, 2 Eternal Scourge. I don't even know what Eternal Scourge is.
Oh, you're going to like this. See,
Yeah.
I actually, before I tell you what it is, let me just let you know.
Yeah.
I actually love this. This is the best Skred Red deck I've ever seen.
Really?
This is so awesome, the stuff going on here, and you're going to love the levels of technology. This is a new breed of Skred Red deck. And this isn't even really a Skred Red deck. He's using Skred in this case as
He's got scrying sheets.
He does,
This is a
and
Skred
it is
Red
a
deck.
Skred Red deck. It definitely is a Skred Red deck, but philosophically wise, this is a prison deck.
Oh, yeah?
This is a prison deck, and that's how he won his first round in the top 8 is by locking out his opponent. See, this Skred Red deck has almost no burn. Almost none. He's got 4 lightning bolts, 4 Skreds, 1 Magma Jet.
How is that?
One Magma Jet.
How is that his burn
That's
card,
the
though?
smoking gun. That's how you know he knows. He knows what he is. He's using it for library selection to help set up
You
to
don't,
find the right lock components.
you don't have to convince me about Magma Jet. Back in the day, right, when we didn't have as nice of things, I was always for Magma Jet to start, and I would sideboard Lash Out. I loved Lash Out because I loved Magma Jet so much, and so we would play the crappy Magma Jet that couldn't even target humans, or I mean not human creatures, but opponent players, right?
Yes.
But now we have nicer things. Magma Jet seems to me.
Magma Jet sets up scrying sheets.
Well, that's true. All right,
So,
I'm down
wait.
for Magma Jet.
No, one. And here's the part that is so beautiful about Mackey's deck. 4 main deck Relic of Progenitus, because this is a spoiler deck. He's already playing Blood Moon for the free wins.
Yeah.
He's going to play 4 main deck Relic of Progenitus for the free wins. But wait till you see what he gets against some of the like Jund, Abzan, the 3-color decks, Grixis, any sort of stuff like that. He's got 2 copies of Eternal Scourge to synergize with
It's not
his
even a
Relic.
red card. I didn't know what this card was.
So Eternal Scourge is 3 colorless for a 3/3 Eldrazi Horror, and you can cast it from exile. And when it becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, exile it. So one of the things that happens when you have an Eternal Scourge is that your opponent can't path it, which it would just be exiled anyway. But they can't path it, they can't bolt it, they can't helix it. There's so many removal spells: Terminate, Maelstrom Pulse, Abrupt Decay. They can't do these things to the Eternal Scourge, or else it'll just get exiled, and then you could
play it
replay
from
it.
exile.
And when Eternal Scourge is in play, it's big enough to moat 2/2s, which are quite common in the format right now. But when it dies, even if it dies and goes to your graveyard, you get it back later because of Relic of Progenitus. When you Relic, it exiles both players' graveyards, and then you just get to rebuy your Trained Armadon.
Oh, wow, that's great.
He's literally just building a Call of the Herd. It's
How
so
could you
sick.
not? I love this card now.
Yes.
How could you not play 4?
You get diminishing returns from it. So if you look at his deck, he's already got 3 Blood Moons, 3 Anger of the Gods, 2 Eternal Scourges for 8 different 3-drops, despite the fact that he also has 4 Mind Stones in a deck full of 4-drops. So, you do get diminishing returns, and at the end of the day, it's a 3/3. Right?
3.
Right. But it is...
This is a heck of a gnarled mass, though.
Oh, absolutely. And his Anger of the Gods get it to the grave.
Oh.
You get to rebuy. So often
it.
when you have a blocker in play that's holding these things off, your sweeper might kill your blocker, but in this case, you can just rebuy the Eternal Scourge.
So these are some questions I have.
Yeah.
I'm actually down with playing with Blood Moon main deck. So he's,
Absolutely.
like you said, he's a kind of a prisonist deck. Wouldn't you want the 4th Blood Moon somewhere?
No. I actually think it's so brilliant. Mackie has, not only does he have 3 Blood Moons main deck, he switches it on him. After sideboarding, he brings in 4 Molten Rains. That's 7. That's so much mana denial.
But you're saying you think he takes out the Blood Moon and bring in the Molten Rain?
No.
Oh, okay. That
plays
so it's
both.
redundant. Okay.
But the 4th Molten Rain is better than the 4th Blood Moon. You see, he's clearly playing a Blood Moon deck.
Yeah.
And people are going to sideboard against him like a Blood Moon deck. And people are going to fetch up their basics fast.
Yeah.
Slowing them down because they have basics instead of duels.
Yep.
And his Blood Moons his Molten Rains will just start destroying. Either he'll go after duels because he doesn't have a Blood Moon and he just wants to get some extra damage, or he'll go after the basics because they so conveniently found the only swamp in their deck and now he destroyed it. Like you get diminishing returns from the 2nd Blood Moon.
So
I
get some of this stuff right. Why does he not? Ensnaring Bridge is a legal card to play, right? I think that's a card that I would want somewhere. Is that a crazy thing?
It's not crazy.
If you want a prison, he's like kind of,
but he's already
kind of lanternish.
He is
if he did that thing.
Yeah, but I think that part of the gamble here is that's not what's beating him. You know, like he's got Lightning Bolt, Skred, Anger of the Gods, and you're absolutely right. He is going to be quite vulnerable to a deck full of like Tarmogoyfs, right? Like he's all in on the Skreds. And he's got 4 Relic of Progenitus though.
But that's great against Tarmogoyf.
That is great against Tarmogoyf.
Forget about that. The old Conley Woods.
The sideboard actually has a surprising amount of depth as well. The fact that he's playing stuff like 4 Dragon's Claws, because otherwise, basically his only chances against a burn deck are either going to be Dragon's Claw or Sun Droplet or Chalice of the Void.
Because he decided to not go with Boros Reckoner, right? Like when you're the Reckoner version, you have a lot of play against burn decks. Like it's painful for them to remove your Reckoner to begin with, and then you can do something, Skred it, just put up some resistance. Like I could totally see him beating a Dredge deck because he's got Relic Progenitus, he's got Anger of the Gods. But like, what about like against legitimate combo decks? Seems
like something that doesn't lose to Blood Moon and Molten Rain. Because he's got a lot of play against the Scapeshift deck, which is by far the most popular combo deck.
I guess he's good against the Green Shoal deck too. I guess because Relic Progenitus gives you some play there. If you have open mana, he's good. He's good.
Yeah.
there,
Also,
right?
just people don't play that much of that kind of a deck. The fact that he's picked up some weaknesses against like big creatures or certain types of fast combo that aren't disrupted by mana denial or graveyard destruction. I think it's one of those, he can't beat everything. I mean, God, he's playing a mono red Skred deck, right? He does little clever things like Ricochet Trap, which helps against burn. It's a little slow, but Ricochet Trap in terms of being able to just steal a burn spell.
Yeah.
Because normally you think of Ricochet Trap as like an anti-blue weapon, bouncing somebody's ancestral visions.
That's actually what the card,
right.
the special condition on it is if they blew you up.
Right, and having Ricochet Trap against ancestral visions, good times, definitely good times. But the fact that a mono red burn deck doesn't have any blue spells doesn't make Ricochet Trap unplayable. You just pay 4. In my day, when I was your age,
we used to pay 5 for that.
Dude, deflection was what was going on in 96, 95. The other thing though is that
2 deflections in Lecanto's main deck.
Yeah, 1 or 2. There's 1 or 2.
I think because he only had he was famous for not having that many permission spells, right? But I think he had deflection.
2 Goblin Rabble Masters though, because sometimes you just can't win any other way. So you just because it's not like this is
an odd choice to me.
This deck. Well, so this deck.
You think it's better than the Handweir guy?
Yeah, it's just a much more powerful card. Like once you're in the world where your opponent doesn't have removal.
Oh yeah, it's unstoppable.
Yeah,
sure,
I think that the Handweir guy doesn't have the fact that the Handweir guy doesn't have haste. You have to hit. I mean, you never really get ahead. The Handweir guy is just much. The Handweir guy, his advantage is the interaction with the land that he's not playing, that Mackie's not playing, and then also the fact that it has a 3 toughness.
Yeah.
And in some worlds, you might care about that.
Well, in the world where Magma Jet is a relevant spell, I mean, let's be honest.
This is a deck with the ability to go turn 2 Mind Stone into Koth of the Hammer or Chandra.
Yeah.
Follow it up with a Storm Breath Dragon for just 4/8. That's That hits pretty hard, right? Because it goes 4, 8, 8.
Yeah, but it's still not fast compared to modern cards.
You're winning on turn 5 with no other help. It's just Mind Stone on turn 2, Koth on turn 3, and then Storm Breath Dragon on turn 4, win on turn 5. And that's not even counting if they did any damage to themselves.
What about Pia and Kira Nalaar? How do you feel about these old folks in this deck?
See, that's an interesting one. That one is a little bit more... I don't have enough familiarity to be able to co-sign it, but I could believe it. It's
glutted at 4.
It is a fantastic card in general. It's... I think that it is helpful having extra blockers against flyers and having just a way to effectively catch up against a wide, opponents that are going wide with things like Infect or Affinity.
Really good against Infect.
It is. And he actually gets extra utility out of it because he's got a bunch of stuff like a random Relic of Progenitus that if he, under some conditions, might sacrifice to get an extra shock out of it. Like those little things can add up.
Is Blood Moon great against Infect or just far too slow?
It depends on the build of Infect. I think that in general it's going to be good enough for Mackie to play, but it's not that amazing. It's not all that good.
My intuition
is very slow.
Is it makes it real hard for them to like hurl their hand at you though, right? Like maybe they can cast a pump spell, but like they might not be able to cast 3 pump spells easily.
Well, so I think that the bigger thing is that turning off 4 Inkmoth Nexuses.
Oh, that's huge.
That matters a lot. And then second, turning off Pendelhavens matters. And then finally, third, it actually can often shut down their blue mana because they aggressively fetch up Forest to make sure that they can actually operate through a Blood Moon. But if they don't already have their blue mana, sometimes they will... Now, sometimes they just won't be able to cast stuff like Dispel. But I think that the printing of Blossoming Defenses is actually going to make their blue mana much less relevant. But the turning off both Inkmoth Nexus and the Blighted Agent can sometimes leave them very slow.
So the other thing is, you're probably going to leave them with maybe 8 total offensive creatures, all of which are base 1/1. So I think that's not too hard to contain when you're a mono red deck. I mean, even just like Chandra can fight those things without a loss of cards. One Pirate's Spellbomb, 1 Magma Jet. Really, how do you feel about that split?
They're not great. Not great.
We're both like each other, right?
I can tell you that if I had to choose 2 spots here with a Pyrite Spellbomb and a Magma Jet, I don't hate the split.
So the available universes are 2 Magma Jets, 2 Pyrite Spellbombs, 1 and 1, or what if we did just do something else?
I want to be careful about dismissing it too quickly because...
I'm asking what you think.
My intuition is that it's not right.
My intuition is, as someone who has played a variety of red decks over the years, fast red decks, burn decks, slow red decks, etc., I don't like it. The problem is the creature threshold in Modern. The creatures, either they're so small that you don't want to spend this much mana to destroy them, right? Because they're both require 2 mana to destroy a creature that is X2 or smaller, right? Like, that's just a really horrendous exchange against a Noble Hierarch. Either of those cards, right?
No, Magma Jet's not that bad if you're on the play. It's a little slow.
Yeah. It's a little slow against Noble Hierarch, in my opinion. But the thing is that anything that's not that small is too big to kill with 2 damage.
So I think that one of the reasons why it's so why those 2 in particular were selected for him is the quasi cycling. So one of the problems with playing a red board control deck sometimes is that if you just have the wrong interaction, you have so many blanks.
You could have ended that sentence in so many different ways. One of the problems with playing a red board control, anything after that would have been fine.
So I actually think that red board control decks are a highly underrated archetype that have how often do you see in Legacy people showing up with these decks full of stuff like Chalice of the Void, and obviously Blood Moon is the big one that makes them all possible. But these red board control decks will so often use some amount of lock components to try to hit hit the format from an awkward angle in terms of the disruption. and then rely on some brute force cards. Like here we're seeing Koth of the Hammer, Pia and Kirin Noir, Stormbreath Dragon for raw power. But this isn't actually that dissimilar from the legacy decks that'll use the Mog Catcher to go. You know what I mean?
I know the
Catcher
Mog
will fetch
Catcher.
the Siege Gang Commander.
I know him.
That's a very real strategy, and we're seeing that legacy strategy right here. I would not be surprised if Kevin Mackey has some legacy experience.
I can actually imagine myself playing this deck. Don't get me wrong.
I know you love this.
I love
this. This is your jam.
hate this deck. So I hate myself for loving the deck, but I love the deck. But my real question is 3-1 split between Stormbreath Dragon and Batterskull.
I think that's another diminishing returns type of thing.
No, there's no diminishing returns on Stormbreath Dragon.
There is.
As many times I can draw one and just...
No,
we're talking about a 5 and a 5.
Sometimes though. Like you have to admit that when you have 3 Stormbreath Dragons against an aggro deck, you would rather have 2 Stormbreath Dragons and a Batterskull more times than not. Like that's...
Sometimes that's true. I mean, I've played
more times than not.
I've played medium speed red decks in standard before, and Stormbreath Dragon is how you race out of those situations sometimes, right? Like Batterskull might not matter. Like they'll send all their guys, and then you go to block, gain lifelink or whatever, and they just like nug their own guy, for example. That's a thing that happens, so that you can't cash in on the lifelink. But in the same situation, if you were clever at blocking, here's another one, Patrick.
Yep.
What about when you're trying to race against Tarmogoyf, right? Like Tarmogoyf is potentially a problem for this deck. Like we said, it's too big to kill with cards like Magma Jet, and it's reasonably fast. That's one of the reasons why it's a cross-format all-star. Stormbreath Dragon gives you a pretty good opportunity to try to race a Tarmogoyf, where Batterskull, I don't know, they might just kill the stupid Germ token.
So here's another way to think of it. When your deck has Blood Moon, sometimes the game goes a lot of turns. If you have a single Batterskull in your deck, you can beat all of their Lightning Bolts, Terminates, Abrupt Decays. You beat them eventually. When you have one Batterskull, it only takes one Batterskull so that you'll win eventually. So I think that there's a very good argument for if that game comes up a lot. And I don't know enough about the matchups that he's facing to know how often that comes up. But there's at least some theory behind why you would want the first Batterskull instead of the 4th Stormbreath Dragon, for instance.
If you're playing against Naya Burn or Boros Burn, would your tendency to be to side out Blood Moon for Dragon's Claw, or do you play both?
Against Boros Burn?
Either Boros or Naya Burn.
Yeah, I don't want Blood Moon against...
No, you'd take it out. Even
Definitely.
though it's crippling against them sometimes. Like, they don't have, like, a natural way to get white, right? So, the problem is their sideboard cards are way better than your sideboard cards. I understand that this deck's got substantial lock components, but... And there's no getting around some of the Boros sideboard cards. I think that they would overpower this deck.
Now, in the actual top 8, Mackey played against BBD world champion Brian Bronduin, who was packing Dredge, as he always is. At least has been recently. He's been crushing it a little bit over on the SCG side. And he said that the combination, I mean, first of all, Blood Moon is real hard for that Dredge deck. It really is. The second thing, though, the 4-main deck Relic of Progenitus, he's even got a Grafdigger's Cage in the board. That's so... And then he's also got Anger of the Gods. And BBD even he even said the combination of Relic of Progenitus and Anger of the Gods and Blood Moon, it's Grafdigger's Cage, all that. It was so unbelievably too much hate, and he just got smoked. And that's actually what Kevin Mackey's really been preying on. This is a deck that beats Dredge. Like, this is a deck where you look at the SCG Open results and you go, man, it sure looks like Dredge is literally just owning the format. He showed up with a deck, and it turns out that Dredge is one of those strategies that if you want to beat a Dredge deck and you mean it, you can do it. There are ways.
A lot of ways you could do it.
There are ways to do it.
I'm surprised that people don't use a greater variety of the cards that are great against Dredge. When Dredge was dominating certain formats, previous versions of Dredge, right, like Friggorid, etc. There are legacy versions that can win so quickly. There's Friggorid and Extended in years past. The real answer was that for the average top 8, that if folks respected Dredge, they had to commit between 4 and 8 sideboard hate cards to it. And Dredge, or some equivalent deck like, I don't know, some Cephalid deck or something, which is essentially equivalent to Dredge in terms of its linear graveyardness, would tend to win any of the top 8s where people were not packing 6+ anti-graveyard cards on average? The answer is you just have to pack, and this is a less powerful deck than maybe some of these decks that win super quickly, like infinite damage on the second turn or something. Then if we're committing some of these cards, the beauty of it is that Grafdigger's Cage, Relic of Progenitus, even Leyline of the Void, these are all cards that can be played. What's the fairy that you can do? Fairy Macabre?
Yes.
These
Fairy
are
Macabre,
all cards that can be played by any colors, not just black. If you want to be the guy who's playing Rest in Peace, yeah, sure, you got to be white. But a lot of these cards can, are readily available to everybody.
The other side of the bracket though had some kind of some interesting stuff. Did you see this Jeskai control deck that won? It's Alex Midas, I guess, playing Jeskai control, won his first round against I believe it was Infect, or actually no, it was Scape Shift, right? Or that was on the other side of the bracket. Yeah. So the Infect deck was fairly standard, but the Jeskai deck that we're seeing here, Torrential Gearhulk crossing over.
One of the things that I'm really interested in is there's such a variety of different Grixis type decks, including Grixis Delver, and Grixis Control like Corey's playing. I'm always interested in, can we do a similar thing with Jeskai, with white instead of black, or a different thing that incorporates some of these cards. I think this deck's really cool, just on first blush. It's got one Planeswalker, which is into Johnny Vengeant, and then its creature base is 3 little Snapcaster Mages and 1 big Snapcaster Mage.
Torrential Gearhulk, yep. And then 3 Celestial Colonnades is actually the primary road to victory.
Yeah. And then 4 Serum Visions, 3 Supreme Verdict.
Well, one of the elements that I think you're probably going to be most enamored with is the use of 3 Logic Knots.
That is logically not a card that we see very often.
Yeah, like 1 Mana Leak, 1 Negate, 3 Logic Knots, and a pun. No, but 3 Logic Knots is actually it's kind of interesting because you have I guess, man, the use of Logic Knot over Mana Leak in this context, I actually kind of love it.
You can set this off with like a Flooded Strand, right?
Oh yeah, of course, but that's for a counter for 1.
But but it's basically, it could be a force. It could be anything from like a force spike, on up the chain, depending on what your resources are.
And this is this Jeskai deck is, man, it's built for some card advantage. He's got 3 Think Twice and 2 Sphinx's Revelation, despite the fact that Sphinx's Revelation doesn't work with Torrential Gearhulk.
It barely works with Snapcaster Mage.
And then 4 Cryptic Commands, another 4 Cryptic Command deck, right?
What's his anti-graveyard stuff and stuff? Because he does none in the main deck, right?
Right. Well, the last thing I wanted to mention though, 2 Lightning Bolts. That's a sacred cow right there.
But 4 Path to Exile. I mean, look, if you're going to play 2 Lightning Bolts and 4 Path to Exile, you're kind of guy who just like sits back on the couch, cracks open a beer, and says, we're going to be here for a while.
So what I love is that this is a sideboard that it knows when it's beat.
Whoa, before we get there.
Yeah.
You have accused me many times in the past of being overly enamored with Lightning Helix.
Yep.
I am not so enamored of Lightning Helix that I would ever play the first, let alone second Lightning Helix before I played all my Lightning Bolts.
No, you have to admit that you'd be more like there's plenty of reason why you might sideboard a Lightning Helix in a deck that doesn't have 4 Lightning Bolts.
I'm saying I wouldn't have played the first Lightning Helix.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you don't get credit for the second one. That might be true for the first one, but Eric Tam, you have to admit, Lightning Bolt Incinerate. So
many.
So this sideboard...
You probably know this. Andrew Cuddio first Dissipate before the 4th counterspell in the first deck that he ever won a PTQ with.
Wow.
He beat me in that PTQ. And I actually...
Hammer of Bogarden.
I built decks like that for a while. I think he played 3 and 3. And I guess Hammer of Bogarden was a big deal, but I was like, is this right? Probably wasn't right. Counterspell's a messed up magic card. I know we're talking about Andrew Cuddio here, but I think I would have played the 4th counterspell.
Man, I hope that's audible. So, Blessed Alliance, Lightning Helix, Condemn. This is just like removal of all sorts, right? Like 1 Celestial Purge, 1 Dispel, 1 Engineering Explosives, 1 Negate, 1 is a Staticaster. But 2 timely reinforcements as an anti-burn measure is nothing new, but the cool parts of this one, I think, are the Runed Halos and the Elspeth Sun's Champion. What are your take on what do you make of what do you think of Elspeth Sun's Champion and Runed Halo in this context?
Runed Halo, if I name Valak at the Molten Pinnacle, that's how it's supposed to work, right? They're cold when I play this.
So when you play Runed Halo, you can shut them down. The key though, don't you have to name Mountain though, right? Let me make sure of this. Oh no, it is Valak. You do name Valak at the Molten Pinnacle, right?
Yeah, so that card seems spectacular in certain matchups. So if you think about, what if I name Prized Amalgam? Does that work too? That's the
fantastic.
Vast majority of the dredge damage is coming on from. Obviously, they can hard cast, a Stinkweed Imp and get there 1 point at a time or something like that, or maybe get a big Grave Troll. But Runed Halo does heavy work in some of these matchups. I actually think, I don't know if this is crazy, if you cast this against Burn and name Eidolon of the Great Revel, are you especially if they have one in play already, are you doing it?
Yeah.
They are super taxing themselves while you just don't take damage from their key card, and then you could just 1-for-1 them at will, not taking damage, while they just murder themselves and just not kill the Eidolon, right? Eidolon sticks, you never block it.
No, maybe
kill everything.
Block it with his Staticaster.
Well, you don't have to block it. You have Runed Halo.
Oh, right.
You never have to block it.
Yep.
Right? So I think that might be the very best thing I've ever heard of.
Dude, Runed Halo is the best thing that we've ever heard of many times. This might be another one.
Who invented Runed Halo? Was you or Jerry? It was you? That is such an impressive card, I think. I don't own any. I'm going to go buy some right after we finish recording this. I feel like that might even be Boros burn technology. If I were in a situation where I could make it so that I wasn't auto losing to whatever key, Prized Amalgam, such a big deal, I think, to turn that off. Or Valaka, Prized.
Well, so actually,
there's so many incisive ways to lose.
So I think Runed Halo does a fair bit of work against stuff like Valaka in a deck here that doesn't have access to any land destruction. He doesn't bother playing Tectonic Edge. He's got a single Ghost Quarter just rounding things out. But it's definitely a Hail Mary type of card, but can also play interaction against other strategies. The thing that I think is interesting about the use of Runed Halo, though, here is the lack of graveyard hate. He's really crutching on the Hail Mary approach, because I can't imagine that this is a deck that's just naturally well set up against Dredge at all. It might be such that he's actually just preying on all the anti-Dredge decks, because
we used to have a paradigm where, the traditional paradigm in Standard is, or in lots of formats, not just Standard, is beat down, control, and aggro. I'm sorry, beat down, control, and combo. And that's not elegant enough, right? There's all different kinds of control decks, etc. But there are some formats where the actual paradigm here is beat down destroyer, and beat down destroyer, right? So you actually have these decks that weren't really control decks. They're just other creature decks that are just great against beatdown decks, right? Decks that gum up the ground or gain life or something like this. But then you'd have this entire class of decks that was just designed to kill those decks. And I think that this Jeskai deck might be positioned in such a way where it doesn't use its own graveyard hate. It relies on the fact that there's graveyard hate everywhere else in the room, and then just beats up on these other decks that don't have assets against the Johnny Benjamin. But what about this, Patrick? Let's say you're playing the mirror.
Yeah.
And you just name Runed Halo on Celestial Colonnade. Are you now in a situation where it's literally your other 58 cards against 3 Snapcaster Mages, 1 Torrential Gear Hulk, and maybe 4 Cryptic Commands?
No, there's no Johnny.
I still like this fight.
The thing is, though, that 2 Sphinx's Revelations are game-winning.
Well, you want them to cast them, right?
No, because they cast Sphinx's Revelation, they draw so many cards, and they eventually Cryptic Command to bounce your Runed Halo and kill you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, the number of cards you have to worry about, it becomes small, I think. All right, maybe you're right.
Man, I don't know, maybe.
I feel like I'd let them
that
pick the
sounds
command
pretty sketchy. That
try
sounds
to-
pretty dubious. I mean, it
Carlos-
sounds better than lightning bolt.
Carlos
But I mean-
Ramao there. No, Lightning Bolt's actually okay. It kills Snapcaster Mage. They might have to hit you 10 times.
That's not a great way to do it. But on the other side of the bracket, we've got Nicholas D'Ambrosia with Infect, who his big twist, I guess if you could call it a twist, is bringing back Distortion Strike.
That's not much of a twist.
No,
It's just
I guess
people
he's got
play
like
that.
one Dismember. He's got a Botanical Sanctum. How about that? But he's got Wild Defiance in the sideboard. I mean, that's something. But this is mostly just, textbook Infect. The deck that he took down, though, was actually slightly interesting. Zach Voss's Titan Shift deck with 4 main deck Chalice of the Voids in Scape Shift through the Breach.
So there are a bunch of different kind of decks that use Valakut the Molten Pinnacle to get you, right? So this is one that's got 4 copies of Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, and it has 4 copies of Primeval Titan, and then a lot of ways to like proxy Primeval Titan, right? Like through the Breach to get Primeval Titan.
Summoner's Pact.
Yeah, down and going, and Summoner's Pact. Does it have? Does not have the trap in the sideboard or anything?
It doesn't, although it is interesting that he's using Pulse of Marasa as both an anti-burn card and a way to get more Primeval Titan damage.
I think that's super respectable. What's up with Sudden Shock?
3 Sudden Shocks. It's pretty sick against Infect. When you have an opportunity to Sudden Shock a person full of mutagenic growths and dispels and become immenses and stuff, you Sudden Shock them and the problem is solved. It really is great in those situations. It's also pretty good against Arcbound Ravager decks. When you can Sudden Shock something and they can't do shenanigans with their Ravager to try to save it or keep put more counters.
What do you think about this, like 2 Reclamation Sage, 2 Ancient Grudge? I guess Ancient Grudge is the best possible card against Lantern.
Whereas Reclamation Sage is a hedge. So Reclamation Sage not only kills Rune Halo, Reclamation Sage doesn't cost 2, so that a Chalice on 2 doesn't. Additionally,
big game.
Yeah. Plus, Reclamation Sage interacts with a variety of things. You need to stop Blood Moon. You're literally a Valakut deck. I mean, you don't need to, but it's really good.
You can just get in at 6 points at a time instead of 20 points at a time.
Right.
I don't know if I can co-sign 4 Chalice main deck. I feel like I would just sideboard that. I guess it's good against Burn. It's a good card against Burn. Eat 1 or 2, super strong there. Because I guess that would be like naturally kind of a weak matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it has been in the past. You're just a little too slow. But having the access to, I've never, even after picking up that life gain stuff, I've usually just found that Burn just still has the advantage.
Kills
it's not
you,
like they
right?
don't have skull cracks and Atarka's commands and stuff anyway.
Well, the thing is, the Eidolon just does so much damage to you while you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing to stay alive.
Yeah. So the one other kind of story, I guess, of the weekend has been the shift in power of the shift in relative power of the different archetypes, because we've seen for the last several events the SCG Open Circuit being utterly dominated by Dredge, and Affinity and Infect doing reasonably well, but Dredge just being a clear most popular and most successful. And people have been in disagreement over whether that's, how much of that is the fact that so many of the best players were playing Dredge versus how much of that was a result of Dredge being perhaps fundamentally broken.
Well, we were having this conversation about when Dredge first appeared, right? When Tom Ross and company were starting to do well with kind of this slight, I guess it was pre-cathartic reunion, but post neonate, post prize amalgam version of Dredge, like, oh, it's this like the whiz bang better thing, and then it had a flux downward then too. But I think that the headline here is Dredge isn't the runaway top deck of day 2.
Yeah, I mean, on day 2, Valakut decks were actually, I think if you condense some of the archetypes down into like decks, the Valakut decks were actually narrowly edging out Infect, and then Infect narrowly edging out Eldrazi Aggro. Eldrazi Aggro usually being Bant, sometimes white-black, doing the Tide Holler Scholar kind of sideways thing. And then we see Dredge followed by followed by Naya Burn, and then Affinity, Death Shadow Aggro, kind of making a little bit of a return, and then Delver. But I think that you can make a good case for Jund and Abzan being kind of merged together, particularly if you count like the black-green decks that are effectively just the cards that Jund and Abzan overlap.
Yeah, I think when I'm playing on the other side of the table, I honestly think of them as the same deck.
They're so similar.
On the first turn,
Lingering Souls versus Lightning Bolt.
Well, at one point it was like Dark Confidant versus Siege Rhino, right? But
the fact that now they both just play Grim Flare, it really does change a little bit some of the importance of some of
The thing that's surprising to me is that Nyburn is only one copy behind Dredge by these numbers.
Yeah, and that's actually just straight up Nyburn. It's interesting that the mono red burn didn't really show up, and neither did Boros. It's pretty. It seems like this time people pretty heavily leaned into Nyaburn. Despite the lack of, despite the bad Dredge matchup, but part of its resurgence might be from the fact that there was less Dredge. Now, on balance, even though Dredge was less represented on day 2, it greatly it overperformed. We'll see who he walks away with the trophy, but so far, Infect has been the best performing archetype of the weekend, like every other Grand Prix weekend in a long time. But
only one folk? People don't like the folk anymore? The folk are gas, right?
The folk?
The folk.
Which folk?
The merfolk.
Oh, the merfolk. There's so many folks these days. Merfolk has been kind of not exactly tippity top tier 1 for a little while. I think
people always they kind of play it. You see,
but never that many. It's the same people. But
all right,
I do like seeing Madcap. Madcap Experiment. A couple people in day 2 with Madcap Experiment. One of the big takeaways I see, sort of just looking at the field as a whole, though, is that there's a variety of different Blood Moon decks up here. A variety. There's none very popular specifically, but there's one Skred Red deck, one the Madcap Moon deck, one Thing in the Ice deck. But for the most part, it's there's no specific popular archetype that uses Blood Moon. This is like nothing but rogue decks, I should say, for the Blood Moon. This has got to be one of the lowest concentration of Blood Moon tournaments in a while, right? Like, who else can even sideboard it besides some of the Delver decks? And most of them are 3 color. I guess most of them are blue red, but how do you think there should be more Blood Moon, or are we seeing like a push in a direction where
every time I look at a Grixis control deck, right? Less so like Grixis Delver, some of the decks that have done well at maybe WMCQ qualifiers or some other Grand Prix we've looked at. When I say Grixis control deck, like a deck that's got 2 or more copies of Cryptic Command, for example, I feel like I'd almost usually rather have some sort of blue-red Blood Moon combination than the third color. That's just... It's just like a stone, like Lightning Bolt your first thing, Mana Leak your second thing, Blood Moon. It's just this natural progression. The opponent's just done, right?
Yep.
Versus the Grixis deck, even if it's so perfectly set up, like I know you're a huge fan of Corey playing Grixis, Corey's Grixis list in particular, and I know this is going to sound crazy because a lot of my favorite cards in this deck, like Counterspell, are in fact black cards, but you play it, it resolves, and then you can just sit back in your chair and be like, probably okay now, and you got your Snapcaster play, you've got your mid-game stuff with Ancestral Vision and or Cryptic Command. Everything turns out okay for you.
See, I think
you're gonna have time to draw your Batterskull.
I think the Fulminator Mage is just so much better of a way to go. I think you can do Blood Moon sometimes, and there's
no what's stopping you from playing Fulminator Mage in this strategy. That card has red pips also,
dude. So Fulminator Mage Colgan's command is this whole engine. That's pretty good, particularly when you can start recursing it and you do like Cryptic Command, bounce your land, and bounce my Snapcaster. Or no, I guess not that, but counter your spell. And
I think the thing that I like about this is that a lot of the time when you're playing the Blood Moon deck versus playing Fulminator Mage type strategy, if you don't hit your disruption exactly the way, just one Stone Rain isn't going to beat somebody.
He's got 3 surgical extractions, man.
Not in his main deck.
Well, he doesn't have Fulminator Mage in his main deck either.
What, I'm just saying, like, in terms of like playing Black or playing Blood Moon, that is a main deck thing, and you just put yourself in a situation where you're like,
the reason
I
can
command though, defend myself against like all different kinds of pressure, right? Like dropping this against Infect, like, yeah, you haven't won the game yet, but you've turned off main deck probably 33% of their available ways to potentially win the game, and even if they get a guy, it's so much harder for them to be in a position where they can overload you on damage in one turn. You just get a ton of breathing. I don't know, even if they have Dispels or they have Blossoming Defense or whatever, they might not be able to cast those cards because they have Mountains in play.
Well, so what's your prediction? We know that the top four is Grixis, Jeskai, Infect, and Skred Red. What's your prediction? Who wins the event?
Is it Skred against Grixis right now?
I'm not sure. We're both on equal footing.
Okay. In the dark, I'm going to say Grixis on this one. Skred would be the least likely to win, in my opinion. Unless, let me think. Skred's going to have to steal from me. I think Skred is just demolished by the blue-white-red deck. I think that they're also very badly behind against the Grixis deck. And best positioned against the Infect deck, but I feel like the Grixis deck in particular is good against the Infect deck. So the Infect deck is, I think, worse positioned. Skred's
well, how do you like Grixis versus Jeskai heads up in the finals?
I like Grixis better.
Yeah. Plus, my prediction is Grixis as well. We'll see.
Like Kolaghan's Command, in terms of cards that just kill creatures, is way better heads up than Path to Exile.
Yep. And sure enough, now that we just checked, it turns out we're looking good because Corey is finals bound after defeating Infect 2-1.
Yeah, so he's going to play either against Skred or... I think Jeskai's going to beat Skred.
Is this another Grixis versus Jeskai finals? That's what it keeps coming down to. Yes, magic. Yes.
This has got to make you feel so... These are like your favorite things. Do you think they've got like Jace the Mind Sculptor like just kind of tattooed to their inner arm or whatever?
Dude, Jace the Mind Sculptor lives on in our memories. You don't want to just constantly have it in your face, like disrupting the appreciation of Cryptic Command and Tassiger and all these nice things we have now. But anyway, man, good luck to everybody. You know, great to see Phil back on the PT and Corey. Hopefully taking down the tournament, or honestly any of these guys like Jeskai too. I respect that, but
I respect the room.
Corey's my man.
All right, cool.
All right, well, hey, thank you guys for joining us. You can, I guess, find us all kinds of places. Right?
All kinds of places. You can find us on Facebook, where we're Top Level Podcast on Facebook.
That's true. We are Top Level Podcast on Facebook.
Twitter, Top Level Podcast on Twitter.
Yeah.
Patreon, our own website, toplevelpodcast.com. Just as a reminder, if you guys could take the 30 seconds to fill in the survey that's on the show notes this week, we'd really appreciate it.
Rad. Awesome. All right, well, thanks for having me, man.
Great seeing you.
All right, see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, so jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends